everyone, welcome back to Maths Help. In today's video, we will be going through upper and lower bounds. So what you can see on the screen is a typical question in GCSE paper. So this is the hardest it can get. So this in a paper would be about 4 to 5 marks. So if you can do this, you're good to go for upper and lower bound in GCSEs. So to do this topic, you would need to have a good understanding of rounding in general. So I am assuming you already know how to round when I tell you the technique for this question. So if you don't know and if you like a video on that, comment below and I will be happy to create one. So let's get started. So when you do questions like this, the first thing is you need to read it very carefully. So an average fuel consumption, C of a car in kilometers per liter is given by the formula. So to get C, you need to divide D by F. So D is the distance traveled in kilometers and F is the fuel used in liters. So D is 163 correct to 3 significant figures and F is 45.3 correct to 3 significant figures. If I'm very honest with you guys, unless it's very specific and say nearest to 1 decimal place or nearest to 5 kilometers or nearest to a specific number, if it talks about just significant figures, I would say ignore that bit. I wouldn't say that's the key information. Now, the next bit is by considering bounds, work out the value of C. So the end result they want is C to a suitable degree of accuracy. So whatever I highlighted on the board up to now is very important. So that's why I highlighted it. So you will understand why in a second. So the first step in this is to find the upper and lower bound of both D and F. If in a real test you don't know what to do, you see this question, you're completely confused. If you do nothing else, just find the upper or lower bound of the numbers. It will give you about 1 to 2 marks, the very least 1 mark. So let's simply just find upper and lower bounds. So what is the upper bound of 163? So this is why I said don't worry about the 3 significant figures. Always look at the number and then look at the last digit. So in here 163 is actually rounded to the nearest whole number. So it's rounded to the nearest one. So now divide it by half, divide it by 2 and you get 0.5. So to find the upper bound of it, all you need to do is add the 0.5. So that gives you 163.5. So the upper bound of D is 163.5. If you want to find lower bound, that is 163 minus 0.5, which would give you 162.5. Now, if you want to find the upper and lower bound of 45.3, look at to what it's rounded to the nearest. In here, it's rounded to 1 decimal place or 0.1 place value. So I will just divide it by 2. It will give me 0.05. So now if I want to find the upper bound, I will do 45.3 plus 0.05, which is equal to 45.35, which is upper bound. Oh, let me just scroll down a bit for space. 45.35. And to find lower bound, you subtract and you get 45.25. So in a real exam, I wouldn't really expect you to write all of this down, to be honest, because once you do enough questions, you can just do it in your head. It's not too much of a calculation. But if you're someone who struggles with that, just write it on the side. There's no shame in doing more working out. In fact, there's only chances of you getting more marks. So feel free to do it if you want to, but it's not necessary working out for the examiner to see. So carrying on from here, once you have the upper and lower bound written down, let's move along to the next step. So I'll just highlight here to be step number 1. Now step number 2 is to identify how you have to use this equation. So the general equation is C is equal to D over F. So C is equal to D over F. So if you think about it in a real sense, you can simply just sub these values in and get an answer and do the upper and lower bound process we just did here. I mean, you could always do that, right? No, actually you can't do that. That's why this part of the keyword is very important. So when they say by considering bound, they don't want you to consider the bound after finding out C. They want you to consider the bound for D and F, then find the upper and lower bound of C. So this is very important. Yep. So let's give this a go. So if I have the upper and lower bound of D and F ready, how can I find the upper bound of C? So your first instinct would be, of course, I just divide the upper bound of D and F together. Of course, upper bound divided by upper bound, I get the upper bound of C, right? That's not the case. You divide the upper bound of D by the lower bound of the D. Why do I do this? It's because in division, normally when you divide by a smaller number, your end result becomes larger. So if you think generally, if I divide 9 by 3, I get 3. If I divide 9 by, let's say, 2, I get 4.5. So with a smaller denominator, you get a bigger outcome. So our end result is to get a bigger outcome. Therefore, a smaller denominator is desired. So that's why the lower bound of F is used instead of the upper bound. Yeah, hope that makes sense. Now, if I want to find the lower bound of C, so C lower bound, then I use the exact same logic, but I need to work in reverse. So I need the lower bound of D divided by the upper bound of B. Because the higher the denominator, the smaller the final answer. If I want the smaller C, of course, I need to divide it by the larger denominator. So hope that equation makes sense. So this is the hardest part of this topic. This is what pushes this topic to a level 7 and higher. So make sure you understand this, right? So this is only possible for the division. If it was multiplication, of course, to get the highest possible value, you multiply the highest possible number together. If you want the lowest possible, you multiply the two lowest possible together. But in division, it's slightly different. In division, it's different as I've shown in the board. So make sure you understand this concept. If you don't, and if you have a question, comment below and I will clarify. So now to carry on from here, all you need to do is plug in the numbers because you already found the upper and lower bound. So for C, the upper bound of D is 163.5. Then the lower bound of F is 45.25. And I do the same thing with the lower bound of C. The lower bound of D is 162.5 divided by 45.35. So up to here, you can get about 3 to 4 marks in this test. I think you can get about 3 marks up to this stage. Now you plug it in your calculator. So 163.5 divided by 45.25, which will give you 3.61325. I write about 4 decimal places, then I'll just put dot dot dot. Now for the next one is 162.5 and 45.35. So which will give you 3.5832 dot dot dot. So now you get about 4 marks out of the 5. Now this is the final part that you need to be careful about. So when they say suitable degree of accuracy, what do they mean? They want the most accurate answer. So they want the most accurate. So accuracy in maths is pretty much talking about the number of decimal place, which means they want the most decimal place point. But if you look at here, if you do most decimal point, it will give you a completely different answer. But what we want is most accurate, most decimal point where both upper bound and lower bound are same. So that's the whole point of us considering the bound. So what we are doing is we are finding the largest possible value, we are finding the lowest possible value, and we are considering it, looking at the decimal place, and we are finding the most accurate answer where both are the same. So how do I do that? So usually in a test, I look at numbers that are same. So 3 is same in both. So I will just write that down first. I will see the next number, 6 and 5. So 6 and 5 are different. So what I will do is I look to the number next to it and I ask myself, can I round these two numbers to make them the same? And the answer in this case is yes, I can round 3.58 into 3.6. So when both of these are rounded, it will give you 3.6. So what is my final answer for C? It is 3.6. So, and what is the units? So C is kilometers per liter. So 36 kilometers per liter is my final answer. And that's pretty much it for bounds. So that's what you do in a considering bound question. The maths of this topic is not that hard. The maths itself, not hard at all. But if you don't remember this method, you are lost. You won't be able to know what you're supposed to do. So make sure you know the clear steps. So let's just do a final run through of the test. The steps. First step, find the upper and lower bound of each individual unknowns, so D and F. Then create the equation. Third, sub into the equation. Put in the calculator and get numbers. Then step 5, round the number to same for both upper and lower bound. So I pretty much put the steps in a way you will get the marks. You get 1 mark for the upper and lower bound, you get 1 mark for the equation, you get 1 mark for substituting in, you get 1 mark for typing in a calculator and getting the right answer, and you get the final mark for the accurate answer. So that's pretty much it for considering bounds. So do let me know if you want the rounding video, because it's very important to have a good understanding of that topic for you to excel in bounds as well. So that's pretty much it for today. Hope you understand that. I will link this worksheet below in my comment section. So always use that worksheet to test yourself, see if you understand, and if you don't understand, once again let me know and I will try to answer your questions as much as possible. So that's it for today. Thank you very much. Have a good